two or three different things. Supreme is either an absolute term or a relative term. For most of the world, it's a relative term. For most people who think it's an absolute term, it is still a relative term. They mean there's a whole lot of supernatural beings, and one of them is bigger, tougher, stronger, more powerful than all the others. Sometimes they're honest enough to call all those other beings gods. Sometimes they cheat a little and call them angels and messengers and demons and devils and so on. There has never been, except in a philosopher's fantasy, a monotheistic religion. So if that's what supreme being means, then it's no wonder all we ever have for that kind of figure are philosophical proofs, because they're the ones who made it up. That is, a singular supreme being is not a religious notion, it's a philosophical one. So you either, your problem is, how does one give rise to many? That's a philosophical issue. That's really not a religious question. And so the so-called proofs are almost all philosophically deductive proofs, and they're interesting. They don't help you much in understanding religion. One of the advantages of having so many figures is you can let complexity come up there as well as down here. You can have an argument among supreme beings. You could say one's nice and one's not nice, and one we're not so sure of. You can introduce a whole lot of complexity. The more you tend to focus on one, you actually lose narrative power. And one of the ways religion does its business is with narrative power. Well, if you can't have conflict up there as well as down here, you've lost the whole dimension of narrative. So you have to find adversaries. You may have to demote them, you may have to kick them out, as some well-known traditions have done. But the point is that I can't imagine a more boring religion than one that was truly a monotheistic religion. By the way, as far as I could find out, interestingly enough, the word monotheism comes only into being in this late 16th, early 17th century, and it's part of the Unitarians yelling at Trinitarian Christians. I can find the word polytheist going way back. I can find statements that such and such a God is a monos theos, it's one God, even though they didn't mention his wife and his children and so on in the same inscriptions. So clearly it does mean one in our sense of the word, but the ism word is entirely an inner-Christian argument where one group of Christians, in a sense, was accusing another group of Christians of being polytheists. So I don't know why we should take so limited and narrow a word and inflict it on the rest of human beings. It was a polemic term. The Unitarians said, in effect, you Catholics, with your polytheism, which is a terrible understanding of Trinitarianism, are embarrassing us before the monotheistic Muslims and Jews. I mean, interestingly enough, monotheism was a term used by Christians to describe other religions, not their own. And I think a word that has that kind of funny freight to it, one ought to be awfully careful before one just throws it merrily around. All religions seem to show at certain points of their thinking impulses to try to pull some of this riotous complexity together, and at other points it gets two together and they start to pull them apart. It's no different than what I said before. Somewhere between one and everything is where everything is interesting. So I think most religions are very good occupiers of the middle ground.